The morning sun cast long shadows across the training grounds of the Galactic Military Academy. Lisa Martinez walked quietly among the crowd of alien cadets, her plain brown hair tied back in a simple ponytail. She kept her eyes down as she made her way to combat theory class, just another unremarkable human among the galaxy's finest warriors. The classroom buzzed with conversation in dozens of languages. Lisa took her usual seat in the back row, pulling out her datapad as Commander Vexitar entered the room. The reptilian instructor's scales gleamed silver-green under the artificial lights, and his cold yellow eyes swept across the assembled students. Today we discuss the natural advantages each species brings to combat, Vexitar announced, his voice carrying the slight hiss that marked his people. Understanding these gifts is crucial to becoming effective soldiers. Lisa watched as holographic displays materialized above the instructor's desk. The first image showed a Zephyrian warrior, their blue skin crackling with energy. The Zephyrians manipulate electrical fields, Vexitar explained. They can disable enemy equipment and create energy weapons from nothing but their own bioelectric fields. A few rows ahead, Lisa could see Zara Lynn, the Academy's top cadet. Her crystalline body caught the light and threw rainbow patterns across the walls. As if sensing the attention, Zara Lynn's form brightened slightly with pride. The next hologram showed a massive Krillian warrior, covered in natural armor plating. The Krillians possess exoskeletons that can deflect most projectile weapons, Vexitar continued. Their strength is 3 times that of an unenhanced humanoid, and their armor regenerates over time. Lisa made notes on her datapad, keeping her expression neutral. She had sparred against Krillians before, always making sure to lose convincingly. The Morthak, Vexitar said, gesturing to a new image, can enhance their muscle density at will, becoming nearly invulnerable to physical attacks. The Etherians phase through solid matter. The Vorsians have natural camouflage that renders them nearly invisible. Each species demonstration drew impressed murmurs from the class. Lisa glanced sideways at Kai Johnson, who sat beside her. The young man's jaw was clenched and she could see him fighting to keep quiet. Finally, Vexitar reached the last hologram. A human soldier appeared, looking small and fragile compared to the previous displays. And then we have humans, the commander said, his voice carrying obvious disdain. No natural armor, no energy manipulation, no enhanced strength. They compensate with primitive projectile weapons and basic protective gear. Lisa felt heat rise in her cheeks, but forced herself to remain calm. Around the classroom, some of the alien cadets chuckled quietly. Without their technology, Vexitar continued, humans are perhaps the weakest species in known space. They rely entirely on tools and weapons because they evolved on a world with few natural predators. Earth was a peaceful garden compared to most inhabited worlds. Kai's hand tightened around his stylus until Lisa heard it crack. She reached over and touched his arm gently, shaking her head almost imperceptibly. He took a deep breath and relaxed his grip. This is why human soldiers require the most extensive training, Vexitar concluded. They must overcome their species' natural limitations through discipline and technology. It is admirable in its way, but ultimately limiting. The class ended with assignments for tactical analysis. Lisa packed her datapad slowly, waiting for most of the other students to leave before standing. Kai walked beside her as they headed to the training facility. How do you stand it? Kai muttered once they were alone in the corridor. He talks about us like we're broken toys. Because it's safer that way, Lisa replied quietly. Trust me, Kai. Let them think what they want to think. The training facility was enormous with multiple combat rings surrounded by energy barriers. Lisa watched as Zara Lynn stepped into the center ring, facing off against a Morthak warrior named Throck. The crystalline alien's body shifted and flowed, creating a sword from her own arm structure. Throck enhanced his muscle density, his body swelling with additional mass. When he charged, his footsteps shook the floor. But Zara Lynn was ready, her crystal sword slicing through his defenses with surgical precision. The Morthak warrior crashed to the ground within seconds, defeated but unharmed thanks to the training saber's safety protocols. Excellent work, Cadet Zara Lynn, called Instructor Korith from ringside. The insectoid alien's mandibles clicked with approval. Your crystal form manipulation improves daily. Lisa took her turn in a side ring against a Vorsian opponent. The chameleon-like alien immediately activated his camouflage, becoming nearly invisible against the training mat. Lisa made a show of looking around confused, letting herself get tagged by training weapons several times before managing a lucky hit that ended the match. Better work on those reflexes, Martinez, Instructor Korath commented as Lisa stepped out of the ring. Humans need every advantage they can get. After training, Lisa helped Jake Morrison clean the equipment storage room. The older human cadet was built like a linebacker, with short dark hair and steady brown eyes. He had graduated to senior level but still helped with the younger classes. Rough day? Jake asked, noticing Lisa's expression. Vexitar was explaining human weaknesses again. Lisa replied, stacking training weapons in their cases. Sometimes I wonder if this is worth it. Jake paused in his sorting of protective gear. You know why we're here, Lisa. Earth needs officers who understand how the other species fight. We can't get that knowledge without playing their game. I know, Lisa sighed. It's just hard watching Kai get so frustrated. He's ready to prove something. And that would be the worst thing he could do, Jake said firmly. The moment we show what humans can really do, everything changes. Right now, the galaxy sees us as harmless neighbors who need protection. That's not a bad position to be in. Lisa nodded, understanding the wisdom even if she didn't like it. Earth's colonial expansion had been peaceful precisely because other species didn't see humans as a threat. Human colonies were growing throughout the galaxy while other species fought wars over territory. Besides, Jake added with a slight smile, there's something to be said for being underestimated. It's won us more battles than any weapon ever could. As they finished cleaning, Lisa thought about her conversation with Jake. She had been holding back her entire time at the academy, carefully managing her performance to appear average. It wasn't easy, especially when instructors like Vexitar made their opinions about human inferiority so clear. But Jake was right. Earth's strategy was working. Human colonies were thriving, human trade was expanding, and human influence was growing throughout the galaxy, all because everyone thought humans were weak and harmless. Lisa just hoped she could keep up the act long enough to graduate. 3 more years of pretending to be something she wasn't felt like an eternity, but if it meant protecting humanity's interests in the galaxy, she would endure it. The next morning would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove herself while appearing to struggle. Lisa Martinez, unremarkable human cadet, would continue her careful balancing act. Little did she know that everything was about to change. Commander Vexitar stood before the assembled combat class, his reptilian features more severe than usual. The scales along his neck had darkened to an angry bronze color, a sign that something had disturbed his normally cold composure. Lisa sat in her usual back row seat, datapad ready, but she could feel tension crackling through the air like electricity. I have been reviewing your recent performance evaluations, Vexitar began, his yellow eyes scanning the rows of alien cadets. The results are disappointing. Many of you have become lazy, relying too heavily on your natural gifts. Murmurs of confusion rippled through the classroom. Zaralin's crystalline form dimmed slightly, while several Zephyrian cadets exchanged worried glances. These were the Academy's top performers, the pride of their respective species. In real combat, Vexitar continued, you may face situations where your natural abilities are compromised. Electrical interference can disrupt Zephyrian bioelectric fields. Sonic weapons can shatter crystal formations. Chemical compounds can interfere with Vorsian camouflage systems. Lisa found herself leaning forward despite her usual policy of staying inconspicuous. Where was the commander going with this? Therefore, Vexitar announced, all natural enhancement abilities are hereby banned during combat training. You will fight using only basic physical capabilities, tactics, and standard issue equipment. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Cadets from a dozen different species began talking at once, their voices rising in pitch and volume. Zaralyn actually stood up, her crystalline body flaring with reflected light. Sir, she said, her voice carrying the musical tones of her people, fighting without our natural abilities would be like asking a bird not to fly. It goes against everything we evolved to be. A Morthak cadet named Grendax nodded vigorously, his armored plates shifting with the movement. Our strength enhancement is not a weapon, Commander. It is part of our basic physiology. We cannot simply turn it off. Then you will learn to fight without relying on it, Vexitar replied coldly. A true warrior adapts to any situation. If you cannot function without your natural gifts, you are not soldiers. You are merely specialized tools. Lisa kept her expression neutral, but inside she felt something stirring. For the first time since arriving at the academy, she might actually get to fight on equal terms. Well, not equal exactly. The terms would finally favor humans for once. Beside her, Kai was practically vibrating with excitement. His knuckles were white where they gripped his datapad, and Lisa could see him fighting to keep a smile off his face. "This is insane," whispered a Etherian cadet from the row in front of them. "How are we supposed to compete with our abilities suppressed?" "The same way humans do every day," Kai muttered under his breath so quietly that only Lisa could hear him. The first band abilities training session was scheduled for that afternoon. Lisa made her way to the combat facility with mixed feelings of excitement and apprehension. This was what she had been waiting for, but it also meant the end of her carefully maintained cover of mediocrity. The training facility buzzed with nervous energy. Alien cadets clustered together in species groups, discussing strategies and expressing concerns. Lisa noticed that many of them looked genuinely frightened. They had never fought without their natural advantages before. Instructor Korath activated the suppression field that would prevent most natural enhancements from functioning. The effect was immediately visible. Zaralin's body became matte and dull instead of its usual brilliant crystal shine. The Zephyrians lost the faint electrical aura that normally surrounded them. The Vortians became fully visible, their chameleon abilities completely neutralized. "First match," Korath announced. "Cadet Throck versus Cadet Martinez." Lisa felt every eye in the facility turn toward her as she stepped into the ring. Throck, the Morthak warrior, looked confused and uncertain without his ability to enhance his muscle density. He was still large and strong by human standards, but Lisa could see that he felt diminished. "This should be over quickly," someone commented from the sidelines. The training saber felt familiar in Lisa's hands as she took her stance. Throck charged forward with his species' traditional brute force approach, but something was different. Without his enhanced strength to rely on, his movements were clumsy and predictable. Lisa sidestepped the charge easily, her body moving with fluid grace. Throck stumbled past her, off balance and vulnerable. Before he could recover, Lisa had the tip of her training saber pressed against his neck. "Point to Martinez," Korath announced, sounding surprised. Throck stared at her in confusion. "How did you move so fast?" "I barely saw you," Lisa helped him to his feet, maintaining her act of humble surprise. "Lucky, I guess. You seemed a little off your game." But she knew it wasn't luck. For the first time since arriving at the academy, she had fought at her natural speed and reflexes. To Throck, she had moved like lightning. To Lisa, she had been moving almost in slow motion. The next several matches followed a similar pattern. Alien cadets who had dominated the training grounds for months suddenly found themselves struggling against opponents they had previously defeated easily. Without their natural advantages, they were discovering just how much they had relied on abilities rather than skill. Lisa watched from the sidelines as Zaralin faced off against a Vorsian cadet. The crystalline alien, unable to form weapons from her body, wielded a standard training saber awkwardly. Her movements were jerky and uncertain, like someone learning to fight for the first time. The Vorsian, visible and unable to camouflage, fared little better. Both cadets flailed at each other with minimal technique, their match lasting several minutes before ending in an accidental double hit that left both fighters exhausted. "This is pathetic," Vextar observed from his position overlooking the training rings. 2 years of training, and this is how they perform without their crutches. Jake Morrison appeared beside Lisa as she waited for her next match. "Enjoying yourself?" he asked quietly. "More than I should," Lisa admitted. "It's been a long time since I could fight without pretending to be slow and clumsy." "Just remember," Jake warned, "don't show them everything at once. Let them think this is your maximum effort, not your starting point." Lisa nodded, understanding the wisdom in his advice. She was called for her next match against a Zephyrian named Vexilin. The blue-skinned alien looked lost without his electrical abilities, holding his training saber like it was a foreign object. This time, Lisa allowed herself to demonstrate a bit more of her capabilities. She moved with precise economical motions, each step calculated for maximum efficiency. Vexilin tried to keep up, but his technique was crude without energy weapons to supplement his fighting style. Lisa disarmed him within 30 seconds, the training saber spinning out of his grasp to clatter across the floor. The watching cadets fell silent. staring at the human who had just dismantled one of their classmates with surgical precision. "Interesting," Commander Vextar murmured from his observation post. Lisa helped Vexilin retrieve his weapon, offering encouragement about adapting to new fighting styles. But she could feel the weight of attention on her now. Her carefully maintained facade of average performance was cracking. After the training session ended, Lisa found herself surrounded by curious alien cadets asking questions about human fighting techniques. She deflected most of them, claiming that she had just gotten lucky against opponents who were struggling with the new restrictions. But as she walked back to the dormitories, Lisa knew that everything had changed. She had tasted what it felt like to fight without holding back, and there was no going back to her previous level of deliberate mediocrity. The question now was how much more she would have to reveal, and whether Earth's carefully maintained position as the galaxy's harmless neighbors could survive the truth about human capabilities. Commander Vextar was already asking questions, and Lisa had a feeling that the answers would surprise everyone. The whispers started immediately. Lisa could hear them in the corridors between classes, in the dining hall during meals, even in the dormitory common areas late at night. The alien cadets were talking about the human who had suddenly become dangerous. "Did you see how fast she moved against Throck? Where did that technique come from? She was barely average last month. Maybe humans have been hiding their abilities too." Lisa tried to ignore the attention, but it was becoming impossible. Every time she entered a room, conversations stopped. When she walked past groups of cadets, they turned to stare. The comfortable anonymity she had maintained for months was gone. Commander Vextar called for another band abilities training session 3 days later. This time, Lisa could feel the anticipation in the air as she made her way to the combat facility. Word had spread about her previous performance, and everyone wanted to see if it was real or just a fluke. "Today we will test your progress," Vextar announced to the assembled cadets. "I am particularly interested in seeing how certain individuals perform under pressure." His yellow eyes fixed on Lisa as he spoke, making it clear who he meant. Lisa kept her expression neutral, but her heart was racing. She had known this moment would come eventually. "Cadet Martinez," Vextar called out, "you will face 3 opponents simultaneously. Cadets Zaralin, Vexlin, and Grendax, please take your positions." A murmur ran through the watching cadets. 3-on-1 matches were usually reserved for advanced students, and never for someone who had been considered barely adequate just weeks before. Lisa could see the confusion and concern on her opponents' faces. Zaralin stepped forward, her crystalline form dulled by the suppression field but still imposing. "Commander, with respect, this seems excessive. 3 against 1 is hardly fair, even for training purposes." "Fairness is not a consideration in real combat," Vextar replied coldly. "If Cadet Martinez cannot handle multiple opponents, she needs to learn that limitation now." Lisa entered the training ring, accepting a standard combat saber from the equipment rack. Her 3 opponents spread out around her, trying to coordinate their attack strategy without words. She could see them making the classic mistake of thinking like individuals instead of as a team. "Begin," Korath announced. They came at her together, but not in unison. Grendax, the Morthak, charged straight forward while Zaralin circled to the left and Vexlin moved right. Lisa had perhaps 2 seconds to analyze their approach before the first weapon reached her. For the first time since arriving at the academy, Lisa stopped holding back. She moved like water flowing around rocks, never quite where the attacks expected her to be. Grendax's heavy swing passed through empty air as Lisa stepped inside his guard, her elbow connecting with his solar plexus. As he doubled over, she used his broad back as a springboard to leap over Zaralin's horizontal slash. Landing behind the crystalline cadet, Lisa swept Zaralin's legs while simultaneously blocking Vexlin's overhead strike. The Zephyrian saber met hers with a sharp crack, but Lisa was already spinning away, using the deflection to build momentum for her next move. Vexilin overextended trying to follow her movement, and Lisa capitalized instantly. She grabbed his wrist, redirected his strike toward Grendax, who was just recovering, and used the Zephyrian's own motion to send him stumbling into his teammate. Zaralin tried to take advantage of the confusion, but Lisa was already anticipating the attack. She ducked under the crystalline warrior's wild swing and rose inside her guard, pressing her training saber against Zaralin's throat, while simultaneously extending her leg to trip the advancing Vexlin. In less than 30 seconds, all three opponents were on the ground while Lisa stood in the center of the ring, not even breathing hard. The training facility had gone completely silent. Lisa could hear her own heartbeat in the sudden quiet, could see the shocked expressions on faces throughout the crowd of watching cadets. Even the instructors looked stunned. Impossible! Grendax gasped from where he lay on the training mat. How did you predict all of our moves? Lisa offered him her hand to help him up, her mind racing as she tried to think of a reasonable explanation that wouldn't reveal too much about human capabilities. I just watched how you moved, she said carefully. Patterns, you know? Everyone has patterns, but she could see that her explanation satisfied no one. What she had just demonstrated went far beyond pattern recognition. She had fought 3 trained warriors simultaneously and made it look effortless. Commander Vextar's scales had shifted to a deep bronze color that Lisa was learning meant intense thought. He stepped to the edge of the training ring, his reptilian eyes studying her with new interest. Again, he ordered. This time 5 opponents. Lisa felt her stomach drop. 5 opponents would require her to reveal even more of her abilities, but refusing would be just as suspicious as accepting. Sir, Jake Morrison called out from the sidelines. Perhaps we should— Cadet Morrison, you are not part of this evaluation. Vextar cut him off sharply. Unless you wish to volunteer as the 5th opponent? Jake's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Yes, sir. I volunteer. Lisa met his eyes across the training ring and saw the message there. Jake was trying to help by giving her at least one opponent who would understand what she was trying to accomplish. Her 5 opponents took their positions around the ring. Besides Jake, she faced Zaralyn again, plus 3 new cadets, a massive Krillian named Vorthak, a quick Etherian called Mystara, and a Vortian warrior named Shadowblade. This is madness, Mystara whispered, her translucent form flickering despite the suppression field. 5 against 1 is execution, not training. Then perhaps you should reconsider underestimating your opponent, Vextar replied coldly. The second match began differently. Lisa's opponents had learned from watching the first fight, and they came at her with better coordination. But coordination could only go so far when facing someone who saw the entire battle like a 3-dimensional chess game. Lisa moved through their attacks like she was dancing to music only she could hear. She used Jake's familiarity with her abilities to her advantage, letting him position himself where she needed him while she dealt with the other 4. When Vorthak's armored fist came at her head, she ducked and redirected his punch into Shadowblade's chest. Mystara tried to phase through the training mat, but the suppression field prevented her from becoming truly ethereal. Lisa caught her ankle as she emerged, using the Etherian's momentum to send her sliding into Zaralyn. The fight became a complex dance of action and reaction. Lisa would create openings in her opponent's formation, then exploit those openings before they could adjust. She fought with economy of motion, never wasting energy on flashy moves, always positioning herself where she had the greatest advantage. Jake played his part perfectly, making his attacks look serious while actually helping Lisa control the flow of the battle. To outside observers, it appeared that she was simply outfighting him along with the others. When the match ended with all 5 opponents disarmed or disabled, the silence was even more profound than before. Lisa stood in the center of the ring, her training saber steady in her hand, and realized that her carefully maintained secret was completely blown. Commander Vextar stepped into the ring, his reptilian features unreadable. Cadet Martinez, he said slowly, I think we need to have a conversation about human capabilities. Lisa looked around at the watching faces, alien cadets staring at her with expressions ranging from amazement to fear, human cadets trying to hide their own reactions, instructors whispering among themselves. Yes, sir, she replied quietly. I think we do. Commander Vextar's office was smaller than Lisa had expected, with walls lined with military awards from a dozen different star systems. The reptilian officer sat behind his desk, his yellow eyes studying her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. Lisa stood at attention, trying to project calm confidence despite the storm of emotions churning in her chest. Sit, Vextar commanded, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. Lisa obeyed, keeping her back straight and her hands folded in her lap. The silence stretched between them for long moments before the commander finally spoke. Explain to me what I witnessed today, Cadet Martinez. Lisa chose her words carefully. I performed combat maneuvers against multiple opponents, sir. Do not play word games with me. Vextar's voice carried a dangerous edge. I have been training warriors for 20 years. What you demonstrated was not the work of a struggling cadet who barely passed her entry examinations. Lisa remained silent, unsure how much she could reveal without compromising Earth's position in the galactic community. Vextar's scales darkened further as he leaned forward across his desk. Are you enhanced in some way we have not detected? Cybernetic implants? Genetic modification? Chemical augmentation? No, sir, Lisa replied honestly. Standard human. No enhancements, no modifications, no augmentations of any kind. Vextar's head tilted slightly. A gesture Lisa had learned indicated confusion among his species. Then explain how you defeated 5 trained warriors simultaneously. Explain how you moved with speed that our sensors could barely track. Explain how you anticipated attacks from opponents positioned outside your field of vision. For the first time since entering his office, Lisa allowed herself a small smile. With respect, sir, those are 3 different questions with 3 different answers. The commander's scales flickered through several color changes before settling on a deep bronze that indicated intense concentration. Then provide those answers. Lisa took a deep breath, knowing that her next words would change everything between humans and the other species at the academy. The speed is natural, sir. Humans evolved as pursuit predators. We are built for sustained running, rapid direction changes, and quick reflexes. Impossible, Vextar interrupted. Your species evolved on a garden world with few natural threats. That's the first misconception, Lisa replied calmly. Earth wasn't a garden world, sir. Earth was a nightmare. Almost everything on our planet was trying to kill us. We had to become very good at staying alive. She could see doubt in his reptilian features, so she continued. The anticipation you mentioned, humans call it situational awareness. We evolved to track multiple threats simultaneously. A human walking through a forest isn't just watching for predators ahead of them. They're listening for sounds behind them, watching for movement in their peripheral vision, sensing changes in air pressure that might indicate something large moving nearby. Vextar's claws tapped against his desktop in a complex rhythm. And the tactical coordination? The way you used your opponent's attacks against each other? Pattern recognition and spatial reasoning, Lisa explained. Humans had to develop complex hunting strategies to take down prey much larger and stronger than themselves. We learned to think in 3 dimensions, to predict how targets would move, to set up situations where the prey's own actions would lead to its downfall. The commander stood and walked to his wall of awards, studying them as if seeking answers in the various medals and commendations. If what you say is true, he said slowly, then humans have been deliberately concealing their capabilities. Lisa remained silent, knowing that anything she said now could be seen as confirmation. Vextar turned back to face her. How many humans at this academy possess abilities similar to yours? I wouldn't know, sir, Lisa replied, which was technically true. She didn't know the exact capabilities of her fellow human cadets, even though she suspected they were all operating under similar restrictions. But you suspect they do. Lisa met his gaze steadily. I suspect that most species underestimate what humans are capable of, sir. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent chime from Vextar's communication system. The commander activated the display, revealing the concerned face of Admiral Threndar, the Academy's director. Commander, the insectoid admiral's mandibles clicked rapidly. We have an emergency situation. Pirate forces are attacking a civilian convoy in the outer system. All available units are being mobilized for immediate response. Vextar's scales shifted to alert yellow. Understood, Admiral. What are our orders? You will command the Academy Response Force. Take senior cadets and experienced instructors only. This is not a training exercise. Lives are at stake. Lisa found herself speaking before she could stop herself. Sir, request permission to volunteer for the mission. Both the Admiral and Vextar turned their attention to her. Admiral Threndar's compound eyes studied her with interest. You are the human cadet who has been causing such discussion among the faculty? Yes, sir, Lisa replied, wondering exactly what discussions had been taking place. Commander Vextar, the Admiral continued, is this cadet ready for real combat? Vextar was quiet for several moments, his scales cycling through multiple colors as he considered the question. Admiral, he finally said. "I believe this cadet may be more ready than any of us realized." The mission briefing took place in the Academy's main tactical center. Lisa found herself surrounded by senior cadets and veteran instructors, all studying holographic displays of the pirate fleet. The enemy force consisted of ships from multiple species, each vessel designed to maximize the natural advantages of its crew. "The pirates are using standard hit-and-run tactics," explained Commander Yathara, the Academy's strategic warfare instructor. "They've disabled the convoy's escort ships and are systematically looting the civilian vessels. Our job is to drive them off and minimize casualties." Lisa studied the tactical display with professional interest. The pirate formation looked impressive, but she could see weaknesses in their positioning. They were relying on their individual ship advantages without proper mutual support. "What about boarding actions?" asked Jake Morrison from across the room. "If they've taken hostages, ship-to-ship weapons won't be effective. Boarding actions will be necessary," Vexitar acknowledged. "That's why I'm authorizing cadet participation. We need every available fighter." Lisa felt excitement and apprehension mixing in her stomach. This would be her first real combat, the first time she could use her abilities without worrying about maintaining cover, but it would also be the moment when everyone would see exactly what humans could do when they stopped pretending to be weak. The transport to the battle zone took 2 hours. Lisa spent the time checking her equipment and trying to calm her nerves. Her standard-issue armor felt strange after months of training in lighter gear, and the live weapons were heavier than their practice counterparts. "Nervous?" Jake asked, settling into the seat beside her. "Excited," Lisa admitted. "Scared but excited." "Good," Jake replied. "Fear keeps you alive. Excitement gives you the edge you need to win." As their transport approached the battle zone, Lisa could see the pirate fleet through the viewports. 12 ships of various designs, from sleek Zephyrian raiders to massive Krillian destroyers. They had formed a defensive perimeter around the disabled civilian convoy. "This is it," Vexitar announced over the communication system. "Remember your training, follow your orders, and bring everyone home alive." Lisa checked her weapons one final time and prepared for her first real test as a warrior. The Academy had trained her to fight. Earth had bred her for it. Now she would finally discover what happened when human nature met alien expectations in the crucible of actual combat. The space battle erupted around them like a three-dimensional storm of energy and metal. Lisa pressed her face to the transport's viewport, watching as the Academy's response fleet engaged the pirate vessels. Bright flashes of weapons fire lit up the darkness between the ships, while debris from damaged hulls sparkled like deadly stars. "Transport 7, you are cleared for approach to the pirate flagship," came the voice of Admiral Threndar over the communication system. "Boarding team, prepare for deployment." Lisa felt her stomach lurch as their pilot executed a sharp, evasive maneuver to avoid a streak of plasma fire from one of the pirate escorts. Around her, the boarding team made final preparations. Commander Vexitar checked his personal shield generator while the other cadets and instructors secured their equipment. "Listen carefully," Vexitar addressed the boarding team. "The flagship is a modified Krillian heavy cruiser. Expect armored bulkheads, multiple defensive positions, and a crew of at least 50 pirates. Our objective is to reach the bridge and force a surrender that will end this attack." Lisa studied the ship's layout on her tactical display. The pirate vessel was a maze of corridors and compartments, perfect for ambush tactics. But she could already see patterns in the design, natural choke points and likely defensive positions. "Sir," she said, raising her hand, "request permission to suggest an alternative approach route." Several of the senior cadets turned to stare at her. Zaralin's crystalline features showed obvious surprise, while other team members exchanged glances. It was unusual for a junior cadet to speak up during a mission briefing. Vexitar's scales flickered with interest. "Proceed, Cadet Martinez." Lisa stood and moved to the tactical display, highlighting several sections of the ship's blueprint. "If we breach here," she pointed to what appeared to be a heavily armored section of the hull, "we avoid the main defensive corridors entirely. The pirates will expect us to use the docking bays or obvious entry points." "That section is double armored," objected Instructor Korath. "It would take significant time to cut through." "Not if we use shaped charges in sequence," Lisa replied, already visualizing the breach procedure. "Create multiple small holes instead of one large one, then use the ship's own atmospheric pressure to blow out the weakened sections." Vextar studied her proposed route with growing interest. Continue. Lisa traced a path through the ship's interior. Once inside, we split into two teams. The smaller team creates a distraction in the main corridor system, drawing defenders away from the bridge. The primary team moves through these maintenance shafts, she highlighted alternative routes, and approaches the command center from below. The maintenance shafts are too narrow for most species, Zaralyn pointed out, her voice carrying doubt. Krillian armor won't fit, neither will Morthak warriors. But humans will fit, Lisa replied calmly. Along with Etherians and a few others, we use our natural advantages instead of fighting against their chosen terrain. The boarding team fell silent as they absorbed her tactical analysis. Lisa could see wheels turning in their minds, recognizing the soundness of her strategy even if they were surprised by its source. The plan has merit, Vextar admitted slowly, but it requires the human members of the team to take the greatest risks. We're trained for tight spaces and confined combat, sir, Jake Morrison spoke up from across the transport. It's what we do. The commander's scales shifted through several colors before settling on decision yellow. Very well. We'll implement Cadet Martinez's suggested approach. Boarding team, prepare for breach action. The transport shuddered as it made contact with the pirate flagship's hull. Lisa felt the familiar sensation of artificial gravity shifting as their ship's systems synchronized with the larger vessel. Through the hull, she could hear the distinctive whine of cutting torches. Beginning their work, 30 seconds to breach, announced their pilot. Lisa checked her weapon one final time and activated her personal shield generator. The familiar weight of combat gear felt different now that she was facing real enemies who would actually try to kill her. But underneath the nervousness, she felt something else. Excitement. Breach successful, came the call from the cutting team. Atmosphere confirmed, gravity normal, no immediate hostiles visible. The boarding team moved through the breach point in practiced formation. Lisa found herself in the second wave, following close behind Jake and two Etherian cadets who would form the distraction team. The interior of the pirate ship was dimly lit and filled with the acrid smell of recycled air and ozone from damaged systems. Teams split here, Vextar commanded quietly. Distraction team, give us 5 minutes to reach position, then make noise. Assault team, follow Cadet Martinez's route to the maintenance access. Lisa led the assault team through a series of narrow corridors, using hand signals to communicate as they moved deeper into the ship. The maintenance shafts were exactly where the blueprint had indicated, hidden behind removable panels that looked like structural elements. I'll go first, Lisa whispered to Vextar. Test the route and signal if it's clear. The commander's scales flickered with uncertainty. Cadet, perhaps one of the senior. Sir, with respect, I planned this route. I should be the one to verify it. Vextar nodded reluctantly and Lisa squeezed into the maintenance shaft. The space was cramped and filled with pipes and conduits, but she could move through it efficiently. Her human flexibility and spatial awareness served her well in the confined space. As she crawled through the ship's mechanical systems, Lisa could hear the sounds of combat erupting in the main corridors. Jake's distraction team was doing their job, drawing pirate defenders away from the critical areas. She smiled grimly as she heard frustrated shouts in multiple alien languages. The maintenance shaft emerged near the bridge exactly where Lisa had predicted. She carefully removed the access panel and peered into the command center. 3 pirates stood at various stations, their attention focused on displays showing the battle outside. The ship's captain, a massive Krillian wearing ornate armor, was shouting orders at his crew. Lisa signaled back through the shaft, confirming that the route was clear. One by one, the assault team members squeezed through the narrow passage and emerged into position around the bridge. On my mark, Vextar whispered over their communication channel. Lisa drew her weapon and prepared for her first real combat. Everything she had trained for, everything she had held back at the academy would finally be put to the test. The pirates had no idea that death was already in the room with them, waiting for the signal to strike. Mark, Vextar commanded. The assault team struck simultaneously from 3 directions. Lisa moved like liquid mercury, flowing around the pirates' desperate attempts to return fire. Her training saber had been replaced with a real energy weapon, and she used it with precision that surprised even herself. The battle for the bridge was over in seconds. The pirates, caught completely off guard, surrendered immediately when faced with overwhelming tactical superiority. Lisa found herself holding her weapon steady while the Krillian captain raised his armored hands in defeat. "Well executed, Cadet Martinez," Vextar said quietly as they secured their prisoners. "Your tactical analysis was flawless." But Lisa was already thinking ahead to what came next. The pirate fleet would have to surrender now that their flagship was captured, but questions would be asked about how the boarding action had succeeded so easily, and those questions would lead to more examinations of human capabilities. The Academy's debriefing room buzzed with quiet conversation as officers and cadets filed in for the post-mission analysis. Lisa took a seat near the back, hoping to avoid attention, but she could feel eyes on her from across the room. Word of her tactical planning and combat performance had spread quickly through the fleet. Admiral Threndar entered the room, his insectoid features showing satisfaction despite the serious nature of the gathering. Behind him walked Commander Vextar and several other senior officers, including species representatives that Lisa didn't recognize. "The pirate incident has been resolved successfully," the Admiral announced, his mandibles clicking with approval. "0 casualties among our forces, minimal damage to the civilian convoy, and complete surrender of the hostile fleet. This represents one of the most efficient military operations in recent Academy history." Murmurs of pride rippled through the assembled personnel. Lisa noticed that several alien cadets were glancing in her direction, their expressions mixing curiosity with something that might have been respect. "However," Admiral Threndar continued, "the success of this mission has raised important questions about our understanding of various species' capabilities. Commander Vextar will present his analysis." The reptilian officer stood, his scales a neutral bronze color as he activated a holographic display. "The boarding action succeeded due to tactical innovation suggested by Cadet Martinez," he began, highlighting the breach point and movement routes on the three-dimensional ship diagram. Lisa felt her stomach tighten as the entire room's attention focused on her. The tactics employed demonstrated several capabilities that our current training protocols do not account for, Vextar continued. Specifically, the ability to analyze complex three-dimensional spaces rapidly, predict enemy defensive positions with minimal information, and coordinate team movements through confined spaces. One of the unknown officers, a being that appeared to be made of living crystal similar to Zara Lin but much larger, spoke up. "Commander, are you suggesting that our intelligence assessments of human capabilities have been incomplete?" "I am suggesting," Vextar replied carefully, "that we may have been observing human performance under artificial constraints that do not reflect their actual potential." Lisa exchanged a quick glance with Jake Morrison, who sat several rows ahead. His expression was carefully neutral, but she could see tension in his shoulders. Admiral Threndar's compound eyes studied Lisa for several long moments. "Cadet Martinez, please approach the front of the room." Lisa stood and walked to the presentation area, acutely aware of every eye following her movement. She came to attention before the Admiral, trying to project calm confidence despite her racing pulse. "Cadet," the Admiral said, "Commander Vextar has submitted a report suggesting that your tactical analysis and combat performance exceed normal parameters for your experience level. Can you explain this discrepancy?" Lisa chose her words carefully. "Sir, I applied standard human problem-solving techniques to the tactical situation. Pattern recognition, spatial analysis, and adaptive planning are basic skills where I come from." "Basic skills," repeated the crystal officer, his voice resonating with harmonic undertones. "Yet these same skills allowed you to outmaneuver experienced pirates who have been raiding in this sector for months. The pirates were using predictable defensive strategies based on their species' natural advantages," Lisa explained. "Once their patterns became clear, countering them was straightforward." She could see doubt in several faces around the room. Her explanation was technically accurate but clearly incomplete. Admiral Threndar leaned forward in his chair. "Cadet Martinez, I'm going to ask you a direct question and I expect a complete answer. Are the combat capabilities you demonstrated during this mission representative of normal human potential?" The room fell completely silent. Lisa could hear her own heartbeat in the quiet, could sense the weight of the moment. Her answer would affect not just her own future, but potentially Earth's relationship with the entire galactic community. "Yes, sir," she said quietly. They are representative of normal human potential. The silence stretched for several seconds before exploding into excited conversations throughout the room. Alien officers leaned toward each other, speaking in rapid bursts of their native languages. Several cadets stood up, their voices rising as they processed the implications. "Order!" Admiral Threndar commanded, his mandibles clicking sharply. "This is a military briefing, not a social gathering." When quiet returned, the crystal officer spoke again. "If what you say is true, Cadet Martinez, then humans have been deliberately concealing their capabilities during their time at this academy, and in galactic society generally." Lisa remained silent, knowing that anything she said could be interpreted as confirmation. Commander Vextar stepped forward. "Admiral, with permission, I would like to propose an expanded training program to better understand and utilize human tactical capabilities." "That may be premature," interrupted another officer, a tall being with blue-gray skin and silver eyes. "We need to assess the full scope of what we're dealing with before making training modifications." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. The tone of the conversation was shifting from curiosity to something that felt almost like investigation. Jake Morrison stood up in the cadet section. "Sir, request permission to speak." Admiral Threndar's compound eyes focused on him. "Granted. Sir, humans haven't been hiding capabilities so much as adapting to the training environment," Jake said carefully. "When you're told repeatedly that your species is weak and dependent on technology, you tend to focus on areas where you can succeed without challenging those assumptions." "Are you saying," the crystal officer asked slowly, "that human cadets have been deliberately performing below their actual ability levels?" Jake met his gaze steadily. "I'm saying that humans are taught to be modest about their abilities, sir, especially when those abilities might make others uncomfortable." Lisa could see the implications sinking in around the room. If humans had been sandbagging their performance at the academy, what else might they be capable of? And why would Earth's government allow its citizens to be consistently underestimated? Admiral Threndar stood, his insectoid form towering over the assembled personnel. "This briefing is concluded," he announced. "All personnel are to treat the contents of this discussion as classified until further notice." As the room began to empty, Lisa found herself approached by Commander Vextar. His scales had shifted to a color she had never seen before, deep purple with silver highlights. "Cadet Martinez," he said quietly, "I believe we need to have several more conversations about human capabilities, and I suspect those conversations will be very enlightening for everyone involved." Lisa nodded, knowing that her carefully maintained secret was now completely exposed. The question was what would happen next and whether Earth was prepared for the galaxy to finally understand what humans were really capable of. Outside the debriefing room, she could hear alien cadets talking in hushed, excited tones about the revelation that humans might not be the weak, technology-dependent species everyone had believed them to be. The comfortable fiction that had protected Earth for decades was crumbling, and Lisa wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a catastrophe waiting to happen. 2 days after the pirate incident, Lisa found herself standing outside Admiral Threndar's private office, waiting for what she suspected would be the most important conversation of her life. The corridor was empty except for 2 security guards who watched her with the careful attention of professionals. The office door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing not just Admiral Threndar, but also the crystal officer from the debriefing and 2 other beings Lisa didn't recognize. One appeared to be a floating sphere of contained energy, while the other looked like a walking tree with silver bark and glowing blue leaves. "Cadet Martinez, please take a seat," Admiral Threndar said, gesturing to a chair positioned in the center of the room. The arrangement made Lisa feel like she was facing a tribunal rather than having a conversation. "Thank you, sir," Lisa replied, settling into the chair while maintaining her military posture. The crystal being spoke first, his harmonic voice filling the room. "I am Ambassador Crystallis of the Ethereal Council. This is energy being Vorthon of the Plasma Collective, and Living Tree Silverleaf of the Biosymbiotic Alliance. We represent the 3 major power blocks in this sector." Lisa felt her mouth go dry. These weren't just Academy officials. They were high-ranking representatives of the major galactic governments. Whatever was happening here went far beyond a simple training incident. "Cadet," Ambassador Crystallis continued, "we need to discuss Earth's relationship with the galactic community. and humans' role within the established order. I'm just a student, sir, Lisa said carefully. I'm not qualified to speak for Earth or humanity. Perhaps not. Vorthon's voice buzzed with electronic harmonics. But your recent demonstrations have called into question many assumptions about human capabilities. We need to understand the scope of what we're dealing with. Silverleaf's branches rustled softly as he spoke, his voice carrying the whisper of wind through leaves. Our species have coexisted peacefully for centuries based on mutual understanding of each other's strengths and limitations. If those understandings are incorrect, he didn't finish the sentence, but Lisa could hear the implications. If humans were more capable than anyone realized, it changed the balance of power in ways that could destabilize the entire galactic political structure. Admiral Threndar leaned forward in his chair. Cadet Martinez, I'm going to be direct with you. Based on your performance during combat training and the pirate engagement, our analysts estimate that human combat effectiveness may be significantly higher than previously assessed. How much higher? Lisa asked, dreading the answer. Potentially 20 to 30 times higher than current estimates, Crystallis replied, his crystalline form dimming slightly. If those projections are accurate, humans may be one of the most naturally gifted warrior species in known space. Lisa sat in stunned silence. She had known that humans were skilled fighters, but she hadn't realized just how much they had been underestimating themselves compared to other species. This raises obvious questions, Vorthon continued. Why has Earth allowed the galaxy to believe humans are weak? What other capabilities have been concealed? And what are humanity's true intentions regarding galactic expansion? I can't answer those questions, Lisa said honestly. But I can tell you that humans aren't inherently aggressive. We prefer peace when it's possible. Yet you evolved on what you described as a nightmare world where everything was trying to kill you, Silverleaf observed. Such an environment would naturally select for aggressive, predatory traits. Lisa shook her head. It selected for survival traits. Intelligence, adaptability, cooperation. Humans learned to work together because we had to. The individuals who couldn't cooperate didn't survive to reproduce. The four officials exchanged glances that spoke of deeper communications Lisa couldn't detect. Finally, Admiral Threndar spoke again. Cadet, we need to understand the current scope of human military capability, not just individual combat skills, but overall strategic and technological capacity. Lisa felt like she was standing on the edge of a precipice. Whatever she said next could fundamentally alter humanity's relationship with the rest of the galaxy. Sir, she said slowly, I think those questions need to be addressed at a much higher level than a cadet can handle. Perhaps through official diplomatic channels between Earth and the Galactic Council? Perhaps, Crystallis agreed. But first, we need to complete our assessment of human capabilities. Admiral Threndar has requested permission to conduct expanded testing with the human cadets currently at this academy. Lisa's blood ran cold. What kind of testing? Combat scenarios, the Admiral explained. Tactical planning exercises. Leadership evaluations. We need to establish baseline measurements for human potential. And if we refuse? Lisa asked. The silence that followed was telling. Finally, Vorthon spoke, his electronic voice carrying an ominous undertone. That would itself be informative, wouldn't it? Lisa realized she was trapped. Refusing the test would be seen as confirmation that humans had something to hide. Accepting them would reveal the full scope of human capabilities to species who might not be entirely comfortable with the results. I'll participate in whatever testing you require, she said finally. But I request that the other human cadets be allowed to make their own choices. Of course, Admiral Threndar agreed, though I suspect most will make the same choice you have. The meeting continued for another hour, covering details of the proposed testing and the political implications of the results. Lisa answered what questions she could, while carefully avoiding anything that might compromise Earth's strategic position. As she finally left the Admiral's office, Lisa's mind was reeling with the magnitude of what had just happened. The careful balance that Earth had maintained for decades was crumbling, and she was at the center of the collapse. She found Jake Morrison waiting for her in the corridor outside. His expression told her that he had been briefed on at least part of what was happening. How bad is it? He asked quietly as they walked toward the cadet quarters. Bad, Lisa replied. They want to test all the human cadets. Full capability assessment. Jake was quiet for several steps. Maybe it's time, he said finally. Maybe hiding what we can do has served its purpose. Lisa looked at him in surprise. You think we should reveal everything? I think, Jake said carefully, that the galaxy is about to find out what humans can really do whether we want them to or not. The question is whether we control that revelation or let it control us. As they reached the cadet quarters, Lisa could see other human students gathered in small groups, talking in low voices. Word was spreading quickly through the Academy's informal networks. The comfortable anonymity that had protected human interests for so long was about to end. Lisa just hoped that when the galaxy finally understood what humanity was capable of, they would still see humans as allies rather than threats. But looking at the worried faces of her fellow cadets, Lisa wasn't sure that hope was realistic. 3 weeks later, the Academy's main training facility had been transformed into something resembling a research laboratory. Monitoring equipment lined the walls, recording devices captured every movement, and representatives from a dozen different species observed from elevated platforms. Lisa stood in the center of the largest combat ring, facing 12 alien opponents simultaneously. Final assessment begins now, Admiral Threndar announced over the facility's communication system. All participants engage when ready. Lisa had stopped holding back completely. The facade of average human capability was gone, replaced by a demonstration that had left the observing officials speechless. Over the past 3 weeks, she and the other human cadets had systematically redefined what the galaxy thought it knew about Earth's children. The 12 opponents came at her in coordinated waves, using tactics developed specifically to counter the advantages she had displayed in previous tests. They had learned to work together, to compensate for her superior reflexes and spatial awareness, to use their natural abilities in combination rather than individually. It didn't matter. Lisa moved through their attacks like she was dancing to music only she could hear. Every step was precise, every motion economical, every counterattack perfectly timed. She didn't just fight 12 opponents. She orchestrated their defeat like a conductor leading a symphony of combat. Zara Lynn, whose crystalline form had been enhanced with additional defensive layers, found herself disarmed and immobilized within the first 30 seconds. The massive Krillian warrior Grendax, wearing power-assisted armor, was on the ground before he could land a single blow. Even coordinated attacks from multiple directions were anticipated and countered with what appeared to be precognitive accuracy. When the match ended with all 12 opponents defeated and Lisa standing unharmed in the center of the ring, the observation deck was completely silent. Ambassador Crystallis was the first to speak, his harmonic voice carrying undertones of what might have been fear. Impossible. No single being should be capable of that level of combat effectiveness. Yet we have witnessed it repeatedly over the past weeks, Admiral Threndar replied, his mandibles clicking with nervous energy. All 23 human cadets have demonstrated similar capabilities to varying degrees. Lisa helped her opponents to their feet, offering encouragement and tactical analysis of their performance. It had become routine over the weeks of testing. Dominate the engagement, then provide helpful feedback to the aliens she had just defeated. The cognitive dissonance seemed to disturb the observers more than the combat results. The tactical analysis capabilities are perhaps more concerning than the physical performance, it observed Commander Vextar from his position at the control station. Cadet Martinez consistently demonstrates strategic thinking that rivals our most experienced officers. Energy being Vorthon's electromagnetic field flickered with agitation. The implications extend beyond individual combat effectiveness. If humans possess these capabilities naturally, their entire species may be a strategic threat we never recognized. Lisa felt a chill at those words. This was exactly what Earth's leadership had feared would happen if human capabilities became widely known. Jake Morrison approached the ring as Lisa's opponents dispersed. "How are you holding up?" he asked quietly. "Tired," Lisa admitted. "Not physically, but mentally. Being the subject of this much scrutiny is exhausting." "It's almost over," Jake said. "One more demonstration, then they'll have all the data they need." The final test was different from the previous exercises. Instead of combat scenarios, Lisa found herself seated at a tactical planning station with a complex strategic simulation running on multiple holographic displays. The scenario involved a three-way conflict between major galactic powers, with hundreds of variables and thousands of possible outcomes. Your task is to develop a resolution strategy that minimizes casualties while maintaining political stability, Admiral Threndar explained. Previous attempts by our most experienced strategists have required weeks of analysis. Lisa studied the displays for several minutes, absorbing the complex web of political relationships, military capabilities, and economic factors. Then she began inputting commands, her fingers dancing across the control interface as she manipulated variables and tested different approaches. The observers watched in fascination as she rapidly constructed a multi-layered strategy that addressed the simulation's challenges from angles that hadn't occurred to the official military analysts, where traditional approaches focused on defeating enemies. Lisa's strategy turned adversaries into temporary allies, used economic incentives to supplement military pressure, and created win-win scenarios that satisfied all parties' core interests. Solution complete, she announced after 43 minutes of work. The simulation ran her proposed strategy, modeling the probable outcomes across thousands of iterations. The results were staggering. Casualty rates 90% lower than traditional military approaches, political stability maintained across all affected systems, and economic benefits for all participating species. Ambassador Crystallis studied the results with what Lisa was learning to recognize as crystalline amazement. This exceeds the performance of our most advanced strategic computers. It's not that complicated, Lisa said, trying to downplay her achievement. You just have to think about what everyone wants and find ways to give it to them. Not that complicated, Forthun repeated, his electronic voice carrying disbelief. You have just solved a problem that has puzzled our greatest military minds for months. And you describe it as not that complicated? Admiral Threndar deactivated the simulation and turned to address the assembled observers. Ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished beings, I believe we have sufficient data to complete our assessment. Lisa was dismissed from the testing area, but she could hear heated discussions beginning among the officials as she left. The tone of those conversations made her increasingly nervous about what conclusions were being drawn. That evening, she found all the human cadets gathered in Jake's quarters, their faces reflecting the same anxiety she felt. Any word on what happens next? Asked Kai Johnson, his usual optimism subdued by weeks of intensive scrutiny. Nothing official, Jake replied. But I've been hearing rumors. Some species representatives are calling for restrictions on human expansion. Others want to establish monitoring stations around Earth. Lisa felt her heart sink. They see us as a threat. Of course they do, said Maria Santos, one of the senior human cadets. We just proved that everything they thought they knew about human capabilities was wrong. From their perspective, Earth has been lying to them for decades. The conversation was interrupted by a communication request from Admiral Threndar. Jake accepted the call, and the insectoid commander's image appeared in the room's holographic display. Attention, human cadets, the Admiral began, his compound eyes reflecting what might have been regret. The assessment phase has been completed. Tomorrow you will be briefed on the decisions reached by the Galactic Council regarding Earth's status and humanity's role in interspecies relations. The communication ended, leaving the human students in worried silence. Lisa stared out the window at the stars beyond the academy, wondering if she had just witnessed the beginning of humanity's golden age or the end of their peaceful coexistence with the galaxy. The comfortable anonymity that had protected Earth was gone forever, replaced by a recognition of human capabilities that might prove to be more curse than blessing. Tomorrow would bring answers, but Lisa wasn't sure she wanted to hear them. The galaxy was about to decide humanity's fate, and their own demonstrated abilities had given their judges plenty to think about. She just hoped that when the final judgment came, the galaxy would remember that the same species, capable of such devastating warfare, had chosen to use those abilities to protect others rather than conquer them. But as she looked at the worried faces of her fellow humans, Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that their long masquerade as the galaxy's weakest species had just ended in the worst possible way.